It really is difficult to say that the occupant of the Oval Office is truly one of the stupidest people you have ever seen. But without a doubt, Donald Trump is an idiot. When you see these right-wingers trying to label anybody black or Latino or female as being a DEI hire when something goes wrong, and then you look at the sheer incompetence of this white man, you go, really? Really? Y'all want to call somebody a DEI hire? Today, 5 African leaders came to the White House for bilateral meetings. And I felt sorry for them because here they are sitting there having to kowtow, beg, coddle, praise this egotistical maniac because he so desperately needs attention. At one point, one of the leaders from Senegal was talking, and Trump literally was like, I need you to hurry up. Do y'all have the video? Play that video.
We have a great deal of resources, many resources, and we have a lot of opportunities to offer in terms of investment. We have minerals, rare earths, rare minerals. We have manganese. We have uranium. And we have a good inclination that we have lithium and other minerals. We're the second largest producer for the last 60 years in Africa of iron ore. We produce a lot. And we have a lot of resources in our seawaters, so lots of fishing and whatnot. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
But I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it. Maybe we're going to have to go a little bit quicker than this because we have a whole schedule. If I could just say it's, your name and your country would be great. Thank you, please.
It was 5 countries. It was 5. Oh my God, we're going way too slow. It was sheer idiot. It was just idiot. But this moment right here shows you how absolutely dumb this man is. Listen to this.
We want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia.
Yeah.
We'd like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from.
Run that back.
We want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia.
Yeah.
We'd like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir. Thank you.
they come from.
Joseph Boakai is the president of Liberia. Also happens to be fraternity brother of mine, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Trump is so stupid that he literally has no clue. He don't know where Liberia is. He don't know how many people are there. He doesn't know anything about his history. If they had showed this dumbass the Liberian flag, this idiot probably would have went, oh my goodness, that's the Liberian flag? That looks like the Texas flag. Oh my God, that looks like the United States flag. I'm curious, Mr. President. Why did your people pick a flag that looks like ours? Maybe because the country was colonized by formerly enslaved people of African descent who actually were sent to Liberia by the American Colonization Society. In fact, y'all, it was a merging of two forces. You had the American Colonization Society, you had these abolitionists and these racist plantation owners who actually came together and said, hey, let's ship these folks out. A lot of them came from Virginia. And they traveled from the United States to Liberia. And what's crazy, we talk about colonization, these formerly enslaved people of African descent brought that, frankly, white plantation mentality to Liberia. And they basically colonized the indigenous people in Liberia. And up until they had the Civil War in Liberia, these descendants of formerly enslaved people ran the country. Yep, they ran the country. Then you had the Civil War. And what you've had is you still have these battles going on between those folks who are indigenous and those who came from the United States. See, Donald Trump is so dumb, he's never read. He knows nothing. So just like years ago when I had to give Bill O'Reilly an education about patriotism and black Americans when he criticized Colin Kaepernick, how about this, Donald? A book by Stephen Ellis. It's called The Mask of Anarchy, The Destruction of Liberia and the Religious Dimension of an African Civil War. How about you and MAGA read that? How about this? Madam President, The Extraordinary Journey of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf by New York Times writer Helene Cooper, who's also from Liberia. The first woman to be president of an African nation. Yep. How about that, you idiot? Oh, here's another one. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, This Child Will Be Great. Memoir of a Remarkable Life by Africa's First Woman President. It's her book. This is her memoir. You might learn about Liberia reading that book. How about this, Donald Trump? The Price of Liberty, African Americans and the Making of Liberia by Claude A. Clegg III. How about that? Let's see here. What do I have? Another America, the story of Liberia and the former slaves who ruled it. James Cement. See this right here? That's them, you idiot. How about this here? An African Republic, Black and White Virginians in the Making of Liberia. Marie Tyler McGraw. How about you read that, dumbass? Let's see here. Oh, Donald Trump, ever heard of Goodyear? Guess what? Goodyear was built by the rubber from Liberia. Here's a book called Empire Rubber, Firestone Scramble for Land and Power in Liberia by Greg Mittman. How about you read that book? Let's see. How about this? Liberia, America's African Stepchild. This book, way too many pages for Donald Trump, by David Gene Reese. That's this right here. Now, some of y'all may be saying, dang, Roland, that's a lot of books on Liberia. Man, why do you have all those books on Liberia? I don't know. It could be because in 2022, when they had their bicentennial celebration of those folks traveling from the United States to Liberia, they actually had a celebration. We were there covering that whole deal. We spent 10 days there. We did numerous specials on it. Y'all can go to the Black Sun Network app. You can go to our YouTube channel and see the coverage we did. So I'm going to give you about 15 minutes or so of some of the coverage, and you can actually hear us talk about the history of Liberia. But these idiots know nothing about it except, oh my God, you speak English so well. It shows you how dumb and clueless these people are. He wouldn't even read a briefing paper his staff provided for him because Donald Trump is an absolute dumbass. Press play.
In Monrovia, Liberia, and where we're standing right now is this massive monument to the first president of Liberia. It's Joseph Jenkins Roberts. You see this statue, you see this just amazing display here, and it shows you two things. It shows you the history, if you will. It shows paying homage to the past, but it also gives you a glimpse of what this place used to be. So we're standing right here and above this space here. And if you look out around here, you'll see at this high point overlooking all of Monrovia. You see this amazing edifice. You got the ocean that's to the right over here. Again, gorgeous views. Then, of course, when you look over here, is what was called the Ducor Hotel. And so what is essentially now ruins sits there right there as well. This is all greatly impacted. That hotel was destroyed by the Civil War that was in 1989. Remember, there was a coup in 1980, Civil War 1989, lasted 15 years. And so I've talked about this a lot, what this country used to be. In many ways, Liberia was the model for African nations. It was the first republic on the continent as well. Ghana became, so when people talk about Ghana becoming the first African nation gaining its independence in 1957, that's not necessarily true in terms of that was colonized by non-whites. So Liberia was long before that its own republic, served as the model, if you will. If you think about where the country was in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of its roads, in terms of education, all of that was, in many ways, not destroyed, but was significantly hindered by the 15 years of civil war. That's an entire generation. And so now what you have is an effort to restore. Any other place, if you talk about the United States, any other place, I mean, any other place, this area right now, where will it be? Will be the focus of massive development. Because literally, because a statue like this here, because of the location of a hotel like this here. And so, in fact, what's interesting about that sign is the Ducor Hotel, it says, the future starts now. But you see the old sign as well. And so there's so much to think about in terms of the effort to restore this country, to rebuild this country, and to actually make it a crown jewel again. And so it really is amazing to be up here, to see these cannon displays, these cannons that are here as well. And I can only imagine what this place, what this spot here looked like 30 years ago. What it looked like before the Civil War. It had to be absolutely magnificent because of the hotel and also this building that's right here as well. And again, as you can see, overlooking all of the city from this high vantage point as well. We didn't want our trip to Liberia to be all about politics. I also wanted to learn about the history of this country, from the founders to even the National Museum, to get a better understanding. of this country founded by freed people of African descent 201 years ago.
That's them. All right, let's go to the museum.
The first floor of the museum is primarily cultural, and the exhibition called Wave of Time. And the Wave of Time takes you through Liberia's history, which is on the second floor. The entire bottom floor represents all of the different politics, our cultures, our music, our dance, a lot of masks. Liberia, you have all of the different tribes are represented with masks. And these masks all have different representations.
So that's what all this over here.
Pretty much are your basic, indigenous culture. This all represents our indigenous culture. So for example, you have here, for example, most of our huts, we use a lot of natural materials. So this represents some of that, to showcase, that we do use our natural materials. This is I'm going to call papa, but it's a form of thatch. This thing is like zinc on top of your house. And then you have like the, slippers, pretty much what people wore back in the day before we started wearing what we have now. This is a game called Makala that people also, it's like a board game. So like this morning at Julie Envy's Crusaders for Peace ceremony where you were named, you saw the masquerade dancer. All right, so these masks represent some of that. And so what you saw this morning is a representation of one of our cultures. And so this is from the Don tribe, but all of these tribes are pretty much represented by masks. And these masks, the ones that they have at the museum, are all antique. I mean, very, very old masks. Wow. Yes. So I'll take your drum.
This is a drum?
That's a drum. Yes.
What if they stand on and play it?
That's called the tukpa drum.
A talking drum.
Yes.
Wow. That's a big drum.
Right. Liberia has a lot of heritage, a lot of history. You saw the country cloth. So that's what you were given this afternoon. Primarily comes from Lofa. And so that's Liberia's hand-woven fabric. Very, very traditional. Woven normally by the people of Lofa County. And this is the wheel that they use to weave the fabric. And this is exactly what they use today. It's still pretty much the same.
So it was similar to what I actually got it when I was in Ghana.
Okay.
What they did the kente cloth.
Okay.
And actually did that. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yes. So that's pretty much okay. So we'll go upstairs.
That requires a technique.
Yes, but I want to show you something before we
this?
leave. This is also one of the masquerades. This is one of the tribes.
What, somebody wore that thing?
Yes, it's a mask.
Man. You have a strong neck for that one.
I'm not sure if they wore that one. I'll tell you that I did see a representation of one.
All right, what's this?
So Providence Island in 1822 is where the first free blacks that came onto Liberia's coast, this is where they landed. All right, so around Providence Island is what you call the Missouri River. So when you read the history, the settlers initially went on to Chevron, then they came on to Providence. So this is what that is. So this actually was done, I understand this was taken in 1819, when Firestone came in. But this is basically what the island looked like when the settlers arrived.
Wow, okay. All right, we're headed upstairs.
So these are just showing you depictions of some of what's in our rainforest. Liberia is home to 40% of the upper Native rainforest. So we are still a very green country. And at this time, so now we're heading up to the second floor where you have the history and heritage exhibition. So we'll start here. This is Chief Swakoko, and she was one of the greatest warriors of Liberia and one of the toughest chiefs of Liberia. She formed part of the early Firestone.
So what is this film? What is this film from? What is this film?
This is from the ceremony for Firestone. So if you were to watch this, It really goes into Firestone coming into Liberia, but it has
Wow.
other things going on in there as well.
That's some old film there.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Then we'll come on this side. We go into the colonization story. We've heard of Paul Coffey. He came in as the first African American to try to repatriate African free blacks onto the continent. And he died, before the American colonization was formed. So Paul Coffey sort of is the one who started that whole concept. The American colonization took it from that point. You also heard about Liberia this morning. He was instrumental in getting people to sign up to come on that ship. When they got to Liberia, he, at Providence Baptist Church, was the founder of the church and has been very instrumental.
And this is your ancestor.
That's my ancestor. That's my great grandfather, Elijah Johnson. And he also was a part of that first group that arrived and became the first black governor.
So, first of all, Paul Coffey, Elijah Johnson, Lot Carey.
Yes. So Paul Coffey is the first African American that tried to encourage African Americans to come back to the continent. He came, I believe, on one expedition, and then he died shortly after. So when the American Colonization Society was formed, it really stemmed from Paul Coffey's principle. So he was really the first African American to really push that concept.
So they first came here in 1822.
1822.
This is, he was moving, he took 38 to Freetown, Sierra Leone in 1816.
Yes.
Wow.
So he was really ahead of his time.
So folks talk about those enslaved people of African descent first coming here. They actually went to Sierra Leone first.
Yes. So
I didn't know that.
So the initial ship that came into Africa sailed on Chevron Island in Sierra Leone. And the conditions, they were really, really harsh. And so some people died, and those that survived were then transferred up Cape Mesurado, further up north, onto Providence Island. And others joined them onto Providence Island. And that migration continued, I believe, until 1862, 1864, somewhere in there.
Now, when we were at the church, that's who the pastor was?
That was the first pastor of the Providence Baptist Church. So you can say he was the founder of the Providence Baptist Church. He was a Baptist minister and a musician. Very intelligent man. There's a school today called Lot Carey. We have a street named in his honor.
Tesla is finished. Elon has failed. That is what they want you to believe. But tech experts.
This is your ancestor.
That's my ancestor, direct ancestor, on my mother's side. So Elijah Johnson also was on that initial ship that came to Liberia. And most Liberians know him as the man that said, here we are and here we shall remain. When the settlers began grumbling about the hardships. So he became the first black governor after the reashment of the settlement.
So Declaration was signed in 1847, so he passed just a couple of years after.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
I think he became the governor in 1827, 28, somewhere.
Wow, and his son became president?
His son became president, Hillary Richard Wright Johnson.
Wow, okay. So your family has a little history here in Liberia.
We have a little bit of history. But these are just some of the, showing slavery, letting people understand,
And these here are actual photos that were shot here in Liberia.
Yes, arrival of free blacks onto the continent, meeting.
Wow.
Yes, but these are very.
Yeah, you can see, you can see how they were dressed.
Yes, very different and meshing with the culture. This depicts some of African Americans back in the day. These are the first presidents up to Tolbert. He was the first, I think, dark-skinned African American because most of them were very, very fair complected. And so he became, Edward J. Roy became the first dark-skinned president. And like I said, True Whig Party, you saw the True Whig Party building. So they were all True Whig Party members. Then, of course, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. You have, that his story. This is a table This table was given to Joseph Jenkins Roberts by the Queen of England. This is the original table to the first president of Africa, the first Black African free republic. So here you have Liberia going through war. Many people have heard of President Sirleaf winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Lema Bowie also joined President Sirleaf, and she was also a Nobel Prize winner. She was one of those who did sit-ins when President Taylor was president and demanded peace for Liberia. So they led the cause to Liberia's freedom and peace in, I believe it was 20.
So how many women so was it awarded to her or the group of women?
It was awarded to her because she led the group. She was the leader.
The women of Liberia mass act, so was it more than 1,000 women? Wow.
Oh, yes, the women came out. As you can see, there are some images of just basically saying peace. And from my understanding, they went to Ghana, I believe, for peace talks. And the men were in the room talking, and the women came and they, I think, held hands and said that the men would not leave. They pretty much held them hostage and said, you will not leave that room until you bring Liberia to peace. And so that's what happened. And Lema Bowie led that cause. She along with many other women.
She doesn't get talked a lot about.
Yes, but she's here. I mean, she's here. She's working, and she's doing her thing.
Would love to talk to her.
She's here. Oh, these are atrocities of war on this side. Very graphic images of the war. Once again, a reminder of how much Liberia lost during this war.
Severed heads, bodies. How many? What's the estimated number of people who died during this war?
When I'm talking to the panel, you're gonna.
Right. It was a very atrocious war.
It was 15 years?
It went from 1990 up until 2003 is when we finally decided no more. So that's President Tubman. He and President Tolbert. So Tubman and Tolbert. But Tubman is known for the longest, he was the longest running president in Liberia.
See, that's not all of it there, Rebecca, but I want people to understand that Liberia and America are completely linked. Later, we went to Providence Island, where those first folks arrived. There is no Liberia without the United States of America. That shows you the sheer ignorance of this man who has no idea about how these two countries are linked. Donald Trump it is a constant embarrassment to America.
Absolutely. Before I get into the orange man's ignorance, what I thought was really interesting, and I really appreciate you telling the story of what happened when the former enslaved Blacks from America showed back up to that area, to the continent, and the level of discord and the destruction towards the indigenous folks. Thank you for talking about that, because even as we think about some of the return to Africa movements now, or folks who want to leave the United States or even purchase second homes, possibly in Ghana, is understanding that in the United States, it is based upon white supremacy. All of us have ingested that. So when we go to other parts of the world, especially when we're going back to the continent, we have to be conscious enough to do the work to practice anti-racism with ourselves and anti-white supremacy with ourselves. So we're not taking that toxicity from America to the continent, because that's not helpful either. And that's even leads to some of the diaspora wars that we see now between Black Americans and those on the continent. But what I really enjoyed hearing was the history of former President Johnson Sirleaf, who is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and being the first woman president on the continent. I appreciate that was highlighted. But going to the ignorance of Donald Trump, The thing about the white supremacy ideology is so flawed and it's inferior. It's not based upon logic. It's not based upon actual factual information. And it's a morally defunct and bankrupt ideology. But of course, Donald Trump thought that he was in the right, and he thought that he thinks that he is superior to those leaders who showed up to the White House with honor and with dignity. It's unfortunate that those leaders and other leaders from sub-Saharan Africa is showing up to the White House. I get why they have to. I understand the current world stage, but he's not fooling anyone. The entire world is watching, and they understand how ignorant and morally depraved the current leader of the United States is.
Joe, the folks were called Americo-Liberians, and they ran that country until Samuel Doe became president. And the thing here, you had two civil wars there, and Charles Taylor, rebel leader, took over. And then, of course, they finally had peace. And then, of course, we saw what happened with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf becoming president. And what's so sad is that because of Doge's cuts to USAID, that has negatively impacted countries like Liberia. 250,000 people died in their civil war. It's an extremely young country. There are some, if you guys advance it, we actually, when I was there, we visited Providence Island. We had drone shots and everything that was the place where those first people of African descent, the founders of, frankly, Liberia, first arrived on that land. And the country, guys, kill the audio, please. It's loud. You don't have, unfortunately, significant manufacturing there. The rubber plants, unfortunately, what happened there was the Goodyears of the world, Firestone, they basically stripped the rubber and then sent it out to America to be actually produced. So unfortunately, you have a young country that doesn't have economic opportunity because they lack manufacturing in the country. And so we see the same thing in Ghana. Liberia was the first country to declare, and the first African nation to declare independence. And so here's a country that has been tied to America since 1822, but it's literally still economically poor because it's rich minerals, and it's being raped. And unfortunately, that video we showed, here you have these African leaders coming there. We've got minerals, we've got this. Look what happened with what Trump did to Ukraine, demanding $500 billion worth of minerals. So the United States doesn't want other countries to thrive economically. Frankly, we want to rape them of their riches and not really have them grow and prosper. And that's what we see happening. And that's why it was so sad to see them have to just genuflect and bow down. And one of the countries talked about, hey, maybe we can build a golf course, and you're so smart and brilliant, and that'll be helpful, and maybe this will help us. I mean, that's what we're having to deal with, and that's so damn sad.
It is. I mean, like you're saying, Liberia is the first and the oldest modern republic in Africa. It was a founding member of the League of Nations, founding member of the United Nations, supported the war effort in World War II against Germany. Liberia has done a lot of things over the years, but they've always been mineral rich. And to your point, the problem now is there's no built up infrastructure. Yep. So, when you really want to build up a country, you want to build up the infrastructure so that they can maximize possession of their own minerals. Right? And
listen, Joe, when we were there, huge trash problem because you don't have wastewater treatment facilities. Now we were able to visit some places along the coast in amazing resorts and beaches. It was so serene being out there. But then when you go inside, we traveled, and then we were only in Monrovia. And here's the problem. George Weah was the president at the time. Well, his native village because of the roads that were just destroyed during the Civil War, it literally takes a couple of days to travel to where he's from. And it's treacherous, and then when it rains. And so that's why I said in the video, unfortunately, that 15 years, the 15-year Civil War destroyed the infrastructure. The reality is, if that Civil War doesn't happen, Liberia is essentially the most advanced African country. The first five-star, what I was describing there, the first five-star hotel in Africa was right there in Monrovia. And so they are still trying to recover from a civil war that ended more than 20 years ago. And they're having to come to the White House to talk to an idiot begging for help.
Yeah, and that's what's so tough. I mean, during the Civil War, their economy went to pot. It dwindled 90%, right? And so they've got this incredible rich history, but they've had some serious bumps in the road and basically have had to start all over. And now it's kind of like they're groveling, and Trump is sitting there with his arms folded like a Lakers fan in the Clipper game saying, what can you do for me? You know, and so it's going to come to stripping them of minerals, not building them up, not helping them self-determine all the better, not recognizing the long-standing relationship Liberia and the United States have actually had. Liberia was really one of the only non-Western countries and, one of the only African countries that was on the front as it pertains to the League of Nations, as it pertains to the United Nations and these types of things. It would be incredible if a staffer actually put that together and put that in front of him and said, here's the best way to take advantage of what it is that they're trying to do in a mutually beneficial way. But he's not thinking that way because he doesn't understand history. He's not trying to understand history. And that's what's particularly difficult, because for all of these African nations that are often mineral rich, in their case, they've got magnesium, they've got manganese, et cetera. The United States' thing, Trump's thing is, well, let's just strip them blind, not help them self-determine, give them a couple pennies a dollar on it, relatively speaking, and then we'll just go off into the sunset in exchange for something we promised to do, but we really don't do anyway. And so it is sad that way. And hopefully this is something that at least people can be more aware of, understanding this history, understanding how important it is going to be for private investment and other folks to help come in and build up these countries on some level, because the United States is not going to do it with a mutually best interest at heart. It's going to be just, here's what we do. We take the minerals and we go do what we want to do without contributing to infrastructure, without contributing to building. And any country that the United States is honest about building and rebuilding, we didn't skip infrastructure. We involved infrastructure. We didn't skip construction. We helped facilitate it and helped it happen, because this is what pushes democracy forward. This is what promotes democracy and security and prosperity.
Yep.
But as it pertains to these Black African nations, he's not trying to do that.
Absolutely. So folks, do me a favor. If you want to see more, just simply go to our YouTube channel, type in Roland in Liberia. You'll see when I spoke in Monrovia, that was not planned. They asked me just to come up and speak. We covered the whole ceremony. It was Monrovia Day while we were there. There were so many other things that we covered. We actually visited, like I say, several resorts. We visited a housing development that was being built. And so you're going to get a real sense of what it was like for us to be there in Liberia for the 200 bicentennial celebration. That was 3 years ago. That was February 2022. So please do that.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.